Yeah.
Okay, so this panel is about game investment. So before starting, I'd like to ask you guys, like, who is involving in like game investment? None. Zero? Oh, okay, okay. How about like who's doing game business? Okay, okay. So, okay, sure. So like today we have whole game investment ecosystem. I invest in game funds, and he's doing game investment, and he's doing a game startup. So we will discuss about game investment trend both in Japan and overseas, and also from both startup side and investor side. So let's start ourselves. Let me start myself. So I'm Michiko Kakia. I'm running a fund called Enfi. Enfi is a Japan-based game fund, but we invest in game funds, not the game startup. And we invest in game funds overseas. So we invested in like Finland, Sweden, India, or like outside of Japan. And the reason why I started my game fund is because I started my career from PlayStation's game business. I started back in 2000s. I started a game kind of like accelerator program in PlayStation, and after that I moved to like investment bank, investing in game listed companies. But in 2010s, game startups are really getting popular, and I wanted to invest in games. I wanted to invest in game startups, but like there's no game VCs in Japan. That's why I decided to set up my own fund. So Enfi started in 2020s, and we have two funds right now, and one is already closed, but like the fund two is still open. So if any of you guys wants to invest in game VCs, Enfi is the one that's only the Enfi is the only fund of funds doing the game VCs. So please come talk to me. Okay, so over to you.
Hi, I'm Will Bone from Digital Will. We offer a platform called Wordle, which is a AI-based platform for game developers to distribute their games to any sort of game channel out there. So that way, it's just one shot to distribute to basically any sort of gaming surface out there. I've been, Japan's been my inspiration for learning how to program at a young age, and that's why I learned programming, and that's why I'm here in the video game industry.
Hi everyone, my name is Jonathan. I'm from Big Crowd Ventures. Can you guys hear me? Okay. So I'm from Big Crowd Ventures. It's one of the three biggest gaming venture funds. We have about 1 billion in assets under management. We invest across both Web 2 and Web 3, anything that's in gaming. So that includes content, platform, tech, even gamification. Myself, I cover Asia Pacific, so I'm in charge of all investments in Web 2 and 3 across gaming. Please support Michiko's fund. So once she has money, she can invest in my fund. Sure. And it's a very synergistic relationship.
And if you guys invest in us, then like the money will go to him.
It all goes around.
Yeah. So like since we are so like believing in game investment, but like actually like maybe they don't know. So I'd like to ask like why, like how do you see the potential of investing in game startups? Jonathan?
So I think for us, gaming is something that has been traditionally led by the strategics, the very giant endemics that we call it. So like the Bandais, the Nintendo, the Segas, and the rest of the world, Activision and Blizzard, right? But if you look at what's been happening over the past 5 to 10 years, a lot of the biggest games of all times have been created by people that didn't come from these companies. So League of Legends is a very good example. You look at Pal World is a very good example. So we're seeing this wave of, call it more indie or double A kind of titles that are being created by people with no experience. And they disrupt a lot of the incumbents. And this is like a model and evolution that you see across all forms of technology, right? Like even social media and whatnot. And gaming is following the same evolution cycle. So VCs have emerged as a new funding model to go fund this sort of businesses when historically the only viable model was publishing. And this is like a broader topic, but publishing essentially gives you a lot less economics, a lot less revenue for your company, whereas a VC only takes equity and you have more upside like on the economic side, and that actually is a better setup for you as a company over the long term. Right, so I think a couple of tailwinds. Number one is like gaming is growing. Number two, people without gaming experience becoming successful is also growing, and like the proliferation of like a new funding model is also growing. So I think like, those are the three pillars of why like investing in startups in gaming is something we continue to be very excited about.
Thank you. That's right. And how about from the startup side?
I think from the startup side, looking at the gaming industry, there's all. The gaming industry is continuing to grow in spite of the layoffs that have been happening in the industry. And what's going to happen is that what is happening is that all of those guys that are have been laid off, they're actually making their own studios. They're making their own startups, and we should see continued growth and innovation, in the area of gaming. As these people kind of splinter out. So, I think there's just tremendous growth for the gaming industry moving forward, and more innovation in that field as well.
Yes. So like from my experience, like the game industry in Japan is moving like with the project finance rather than like investment. But actually, outside of Japan, the game investment is taking the like it's getting the majority of like the way of like, how do I say, like it's a way of like making new games. So I think that would be the game investment. That would be the next thing also in Japan when it comes to like game development. And also like game investment, the variation, like if you are starting business in game and like going to overseas, the variation gets really high. So like for startup entrepreneurs, it's a good chance, and also for the investors, it's another chance to make money. Yeah. And as I said, like I am investing in game VCs, but like in Japan, there's no game VCs. So like, what is game VCs? What's special about game VCs? That like, can you tell? Yes.
Yeah. So I'll speak from the perspective of someone in Bigcraft. So what Bigcraft does is, let's say, our specialty is seed stage and pre-seed round. So basically, we're the first money that goes into the company. Generally, we want to own, say, 10 to 15% of the company. And with investment from Bigcraft, for example, you basically get someone from Bigcraft who will be on your board, and he will support you along the journey over the next 5, 10, 15 years as you build out a company. So that relationship is actually very intimate. It's usually, let's say if I invest in Will's company, then I and Will will have a conversation almost like every day, every 2 days. We'll be texting all the time, thinking about what to do with the game, thinking about what to do with marketing, thinking about what to do with hiring. So it's a very all-rounded kind of support as a VC when we invest in something. It's a much more long-term relationship than if it was a single publishing relationship with like a Bandai Namco, for example.
Also, like when I think the sourcing, the way of sourcing is also like different. I mean, like if it's general VC, it's difficult to find one game startup. But like for them, they've been looking at like many game startups. So I think like the DD flow or like the sourcing flow or like the reputation in game industry, that will also like attract like game and startups to come to game VCs, right?
Correct. So because Bitcraft's portfolio of companies and the people who are in our network as advisors and board of directors, these are all very seasoned people. So for example, Mike Morheim, who was the co-founder of Activision, is one of our advisors. Tim Morton, who used to build like StarCraft, he's also in building a new game and he's on our portfolio. So when people notice that we have some very experienced and tenured tenured game developers in our portfolio, they want to work with us because they want to learn from these people. And this is it's a very virtuous cycle because the more of good founders you collect, the more founders want to join you. And that helps us find even better founders.
That's right. And like, what do you think? Like, do you like? Yeah, what do you think about like gaming VC from the startup perspective?
I think from the standpoint of a startup, being able to work with a gaming VC is advantageous, from a gaming standpoint or a gaming startup, because I don't have to explain how the gaming industry works. I don't have to explain, how games work. I don't have to explain the gaming industry when I'm trying to pitch to those investors. Instead, I know that in working with gaming VCs that they're going to be interested in helping my business grow and try and create synergies and things that will help us continue to grow. So it's more advantageous as a gaming startup to work with gaming VCs.
Also, I think you will know more, but like game, like the stage that like the game VCs are focusing on is more like a seed, right? So like it's actually very surprising that like you guys invest in a person, not the product, right? So like it's can you tell us about that, because it's like Japanese VCs.
Yeah.
They want to see the product before.
Yeah. So I think a very key aspect of us being good at being as seed investors is all of us are gamers. So we have been playing games for the last 30 years of my life. I have no hobby. I only play games. So once you have that many years of experience, you sort of get a sense of understanding of what are the games that have been successful, why are they successful, and then you look forward and you apply those learnings and you think about, so going forward, what will the younger generation want to play? Given that they all surf TikTok, they have no attention span, what will they want to play? How is game evolving? And then that gives us a sense of what kind of product would make sense, right? So I think it's a balance of three things in investing. One is the founder, one is the product, and then one is the market. So we always care a lot about, are you producing a game in the market that is big enough? If you are playing in too small a niche, then the maximum revenues you can generate, if you're the number one player in a market that's 100 million revenues, then the maximum revenue is 100 million, right? But if your market is way bigger, then that's the first hurdle that you clear. Then after that, we think about, is your product the one that can crack the market? Can you expand that market? Do you have a specific angle that you're playing into that makes you shine in that market? And then the final thing we look out for is, why are you the one to build a product, to build a winning product that will win that market? So it's always like three things revolving at the same time. And we take all of this into consideration. So oftentimes a lot of VCs will want to look for very experienced founders that have built games in that genre and then they build a new version. We have found that that works, but we have also found that people without experience often are the ones that think outside of the box, and then they create new experiences within that genre that we've never seen before. So not easy. I think it's a lot more art than science, and you have to be a gamer and you must be passionate about games in order to be a good investor and spot this sort of like potential magical moments.
That's right. So that's why like if investors put money in the game VCs, they will do this job. So like you don't have to play games on your own, but like they will do, and like they will like support the startups as well. So but that's really different, right, from like Japanese
And the Japanese experience I've had here in the local market is they're looking for the numbers and traction, and are you just rolling in dough already? And I think it's in a lot of places like it's too early to tell in a lot of the gaming space, and that's why like it's like making a movie. Like, are you gonna like, do you have a good team? Do you have the passion behind the project that you're working on? Those are the places where people I think should focus on. Whereas I think there's a misunderstanding in Japan and conservatism about like not failing, and where I think that's why gaming VCs or VCs here in Japan should take more of a portfolio approach in terms of how they invest and make smaller investments across maybe many different VCs or gaming companies, or invest in Michiko's fund.
Oh yes, yes. I'll take care. Yes. Yes. So that's right. So like the variation-wise, like if like Japanese investors care about like number, like attraction and stuff, but like if it's proved, the numbers are proved, then that means like the variation gets really high. So before everything is like proved, that's a chance of like investing in games. So, and that's what like game VCs do in overseas. Yeah. And also, okay, so how about the game is like eating all the entertainments, right? So like it's getting bigger, and game is getting bigger and bigger. But like, what kind of like LPs do you have? Like it's all game related companies, or like is there like general investors as well?
Yeah, so our LPs, so for the benefit of the audience, the LPs are people who invest in our fund. So a lot of our LPs are actually not gaming focused. So Adidas is actually one of our LPs, right? Like Adidas is trying to figure out what should we do with gaming, how do we engage with the younger audiences through games? Is there a way to blend sports and games together, for example? Many of our LPs are financial funds, financial institutions, and they don't understand gaming because they don't play games themselves, and they want to get exposure to the gaming market, which is growing very rapidly, as Michiko mentioned. So they do invest in our fund as well.
Okay. So like, how about, what do you think? Like like maybe to both of you, like even in Japan, like should investors, non-game investors, invest in games?
I would say they should, because it's a growing market. It's a proven growing market globally. It's going to continue to keep on growing. And then, I mean, if you're not an expert in the gaming field, that's why you have these funds that are specialized in gaming, and so you should leverage their expertise and work together with them in order to see a successful return and success, even if you're not an expert in gaming.
I also see like Japanese non-game companies start to enter game industry now, and I would say that like starting from like investment is a right decision or right start, rather than like start making game on their own from the scratch. Yeah, and also yeah. Sorry. Okay, so another thing I would like to ask is like, if Japanese startups want to get invested by game VCs, what kind of requirements or what do you see? Yeah.
So it depends on the stage, but if you are a seed stage or pre-seed stage company, then you first of all have to have a very good idea of what's the product you want to build. You don't always need to have a demo. We have backed companies without any idea, without any demo that's visible. We literally just look at the deck and then we discuss. It doesn't have to be a playable demo yet, but you have to be able to communicate your idea and your vision very well. Having a very strong team that is able to build that game with you, and why you have hired certain people to build that game with you, and having some commercial sense of, I want to build the next Nintendo. Not just I want to build the next like game, right? We're looking to build the next generation of like giant companies. We're not here to just to build the next studio that wants to build a game. So having a commercial sense of what it takes to build game 1, game 2, game 3, eventually become a giant company that owns like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games, right? So having that big vision is very important, because as a VC firm, my job is to look for a next 100x investment, 1000x investment. So by definition, I have to back the next MiHoYo, the next like Genshin Impact kind of like company, right? So that giant and grand vision is very important to us. And having thought through that whole vision is actually the most important thing to us. Yeah.
How about like when should they come to you? Like before the product launch, before the development, or?
Definitely before the product launch, as early as possible. I think the difficulty is like a lot of us don't speak Japanese. I don't speak Japanese. So I was telling Michiko, I have to go learn Japanese now, because like there's so many Japanese like gaming startups, but I can't speak Japanese. Fortunately, there are a few VCs that do speak Japanese, so Makers Fund is one of them. There's another one called Galaxy Digital. They also are gaming VCs, so there are a bunch. So go to any of these gaming VCs early on. But the one piece of advice is, before you go to like the 3 or 4 big international VCs, go practice your pitch with smaller VCs first. So when you reach the big VC, you are very polished in your pitch. And that's very important, because oftentimes you only have one chance to talk to the VC. And if they pass, they're not going to look at you again until like 6 months down the road, 1 year down the road, when there's been some development. And then, okay, we'll revisit and let's see what's changed. So it's better to prepare and then nail like the first impression well.
I can also attest to you definitely want to have your pitch down, and it's not something that comes automatically if you, as somebody who hasn't done a startup before or gone and done funding before. You kind of learn how to pitch by doing it more and more and more. It's kind of like doing a job interview in a way. You're going to get better the more times you do it. You're going to brush up and be able to answer questions that people ask you better and better through more practice, more polish.
Do you think like in the games industry, there used to be said like cultural difference will matter when it comes to like product, like whether it's going to be popular or not. But like, what do you think? Like
cultural differences?
Yeah, like I don't know, this product is popular in Japan, but not in other area.
Yeah.
Do you still see that, or like it's going to be borderless, or? What
So
do you
I think the interesting thing is there is a lot of demand for Japanese culture. On all the biggest games over the last 3 to 5 years are all anime games. And in China, they call it ACG games. It means anime, comics, and games, right? The whole category of like Genshin Impact, sort of games, they all call it ACG games. And you see a lot of games coming out from China, Korea, and Japan. I think the main difference is that a lot of the content that's being made in China and Korea, they start with the mentality that I want to go to an international audience. They don't try to create content just for a domestic audience. But if my research is correct, I think a lot of the Japanese games are very focused on targeting the domestic audience. The good thing is that the Japanese market is so big that you can do that, and the game is still going to be successful, right? But we are in this world where everything is increasingly globalized, and it's no longer viable to just produce games for a single market. China has recognized that. Tencent and NetEase are all trying to expand overseas. They no longer want to make games just for China. They want to address the international market. And it's the same for Korea. All the big Netmarble, Nexon, all these companies are trying to go overseas. So in that same vein, we're also starting to see Japanese games try to go overseas and be more international. And I think that's a very important development, right? And I think these cultural differences are actually going away. If you look at the biggest consumers of anime content, for example, a lot of them are not from Japan. And a lot of the Westerners are actually Americans and Europeans. They actually learn how to speak Japanese, right? Look at Will, speaking Japanese, right? And increasingly, amongst the younger generation, I feel like anime, for example, like Japanese culture, is a glue amongst the younger generation, because that's what they grow up on Netflix, anime, and on this sort of games, right? So I think cultural differences are no longer like a barrier. In fact, it is like it's a bonding factor that we should lean into for us to achieve like greater adoption.
What do you think?
I mean, I'd say, I mean, sometimes there's some games that they try from overseas trying to come to Japan and they try and fake Japanese look, and those are some failure cases when that sort of thing happens. But in general, I think like going out of Japan to the world, I mean, just think of all the big IP that's coming out of Japan. You got like Mario, Sonic. There's so many that have been inspirational to, I mean, the entire world, and that's the whole reason I got into programming and video games in the first place. And so I think, as Jonathan was saying, like it's less. I think it's less of an issue and more of a plus for Japan to go global. And I also think that there is an opportunity for people from overseas to also enter the Japanese market. But I would also say, like, don't try and fake like you're Japanese. Just embrace who you are, embrace the game itself, and make a global game.
Thank you. I also think that the game is like it's easier to go global rather than like domestic SaaS business, because so like if Japanese I mean like if startups, it's better to focus on global from the beginning. I invest in Finland, and like Finland games, I mean VCs, and like all these like portfolio companies in Finland, they are targeting global because the Finland market is really small, and that's since they are doing it. Like there's a Supercell, Rovio. These companies are all like targeting global from the scratch. So I think that's really important as well. Yeah. Okay, and also since you like Bitcraft invest in like game, but like is there like companies that's pivoting and like moving out from game?
Away from gaming?
Yeah, like I don't know how, but like if like since like game is a really cutting edge technology, it's possible to move to some other things like from game, right? Because using their technology. So like is there like do you I think you only invest in game, but like after all it might gonna be like non-game.
Understand. Yeah. Actually what's happening is the other way around, where a lot of things that are not originally games are turning into games. So Duolingo, for example, it's a language learning app, and then they gamify it. So now we're seeing a lot of different sort of like consumer social applications trying to use gamification as a way to solve retention, as a way to lower the barriers of entry, and that is only picking up. So even some of like the stuff that we have invested in the past is like audio creation tools. It's very difficult to make music. Because like learning how to use a digital audio workstation is a very technical tool. It's like very engineering and like coding heavy kind of like product. But people are simplifying it and introducing very gaming native mechanics to make it more accessible to the youth. Because the younger generation is increasingly more digital native and very familiar with gaming mechanics. And this has been a great way as a funnel to like get more people to use the product. Yeah. So increasingly you're seeing more things that were non-gaming become gaming related than the other way around.
That's true. So like since the technology is game technology is really cutting edge, and also like the users are more like naturally using game UI and stuff. So yeah, I think that way like there's another potential of game investment.
I mean, it's just like, I don't know, if you can make your existing business and existing app or whatever more fun and enjoyable for people, that's going to increase your engagement and have people stay on your app and whatever, and continue to, for example, the Duolingo example. that's going to help motivate you to keep learning and using the app.
Also, like in Japan, IPO is one of the way to exit for startups. But like for game VCs, like what's the like portfolio? What's the main? I don't know if it's main, but like what's the exit scenario for like startups?
Yeah. So I think IPO is also one of the examples, but generally for a game studio, it's very hard for it to IPO, right? It's a broader discussion around how recurring are your cash flows, how will analysts actually predict your business model going forward, because games at the end of the day are very hit and miss. But for gaming studios, the more preferred route or the more prevalent route that we see is acquisition. So there's a very, very clear and recurring trend of bigger companies acquiring game studios. So even if you look at, for example, I don't know, let's say Bethesda, ZeniMax, Microsoft acquired for like $7.5 billion, right? Same with like the game, if you notice like the American companies, Activision, EA, and Zynga, Take-Two, all of them have acquired mobile studios in the past, right? They acquired Zynga, they acquired King. So this trend will continue because a lot of these big guys, as you start from a game company and you get bigger and bigger, it becomes harder and harder for you to innovate and make new IP. So a lot of them solve this problem by acquiring smaller studios that are more nimble, that are more non-hierarchical, they can move faster. And they retain their management teams and let them create games within that environment. So that exit path is still very clear, and it's something that's only increasing. The second way of exiting for VCs and also for studios is going Web3. So Web3 is actually a very good example of many studios getting liquidity, meaning that having a liquidity event means that you're able to sell your tokens or sell your equity, even though the game may not be fully out yet, right? Like, so we're seeing a lot of games maybe start raising 3 years ago, and then now they're already selling their tokens, and the founder is able to recoup some capital via the crypto markets, right? Because the crypto markets fundamentally behave very differently from the traditional financial markets. And then that's another big topic, but I think those would be primarily like the two key ways that we are seeing how investors and the founders exit their stakes.
Interesting. I didn't know that exit scenario is like from Web 2 to Web 3. I didn't know that.
So we are actually seeing a number of portfolio companies in our portfolio from Web 2 transition into Web 3. And because they are able to recover capital so quickly, that's why it's resulting in way higher IRRs for funds, gaming funds, which is a reason why many gaming funds have continued to do well in Web 3 and support like Web 3 games.
Wow. Any startups, like you are running a platform, right? So like is there any startups that's actually like exited by acquisition or?
So, so we run a platform, and so we help enable game developers to distribute their games and reach a greater audience. And so, the path that our company is looking at is more of the IPO route, whereas I think, as Jonathan mentioned, most gaming studios are probably going to look at more of an acquisition route because it only that's more probable in that case. But we're kind of like a mini VC, I guess, in a way, because we have a portfolio of developers that come onto our platform and that we provide support to and help them to grow and make more revenue.
In my case, like my portfolio VC's portfolio startups. So one of them was acquired by Netflix. So like Netflix wants to enter game market. They want to release the game quickly right after the content's released. But like they don't have the technology, so like they bought the technology, and like the startups don't have the IP. So like it was a great win-win acquisition, I guess. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of that build or buy sort of situation, right?
Yes. So I think like the game, maybe not now, but like before in Japan, like game is something like that you have to make from scratch if you really want to make a good one. And like if the game is really good one, then like the game will be naturally selling well. But like in overseas, like M&A is really like the strategy. It's a like very like normal strategy to expand the business, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. So also I wanted to ask, like for Bitcraft, like do you also like co-invest with like co-invest with Japanese investors?
Yeah. So we are very open to co-investing with our LPs. So, for example, NetEase, they invested in our fund. Bandai invested in our fund. So when they invest in our fund and then we find good deals, we share those deals with our LPs. And then if they're interested, they will co-invest with us. So Krafton, for example, is a very big LP for Bitcraft.
Oh, yes.
The founders of PUBG, right? And they have done, I think, just in the last year, 6 or 7 deals together with us. So we show them deals from outside of Korea, and then they like it, and then they come in and they invest. And down the line, there is also a path for a lot of these games to publish via Krafton into the Korea markets, right? So it's very synergistic. And in that way, we help the strategics, and the strategics see new stuff. We also get to learn from the strategics, like what are the ways that operators think about games that we investors don't think about, that we have to learn. And at the end of the day, I think it makes everybody a better like game investor or operator.
Yeah, that's right. So like even like we invest, MP invest in game VCs, and like we also have like co-investment deals as well. So it's funny, like the LPs are at the end of the day, LPs are supporting the portfolios and maybe acquire portfolios. So like it not only like in terms of like synergy, but like also from like return perspective, it's a kind of promising, right?
Correct. Because as Will has mentioned, right, a lot of the Japanese strategics, not just Japanese, all the strategics, when they do like publishing deals, they want metrics, they want numbers, right? The reality is they are a lot more comfortable investing or backing a company when it is like Series B or C, it's been around for 3 years. That C to series, pre-seed Series A stage is something that they don't get enough information about.
Right.
And they also don't have enough people to spend resources on it. So when they work with VCs, they get to see this stuff. And then it means that over time, as they learn more about this stuff, there's a path for them to acquiring the company eventually. So end of the day, it's a very synergistic relationship for everybody who's involved.
Yeah. So I would say like yeah, before starting the business, go to game VCs, talk to game VCs, and get funds, and then go to maybe domestic, strategic, yeah. And like for strategic, what I want to tell is like the variation tends to be high if the game VCs are backed, the startups that's with the game VCs backed up. So please don't say like the variation is too high. Because it's kind of promising, because like game VCs are supporting, right? Yeah.
Well, that's why also like having that sort of like portfolio approach and working with other companies and kind of bundling everyone taking smaller bets together is the way to mitigate risk in that case.
That's right. So I guess anything else like you want to talk about like game investment that like people don't really know?
I mean, there's a lot of news about, and I mentioned this before. I mean, there's a lot of news about layoffs in the gaming space. But like I said, what's going to happen is that the gaming industry is going to continue to grow. These people are going to make their own studios, and then they're going to need more of the tools that like we provide. They'll need partners such as like Bitcraft to help them, grow and realize their dreams. They provide the capital, and we can provide the tools to help them succeed there. And so it's not gloom and doom for the game industry. In fact, like Web3, all these new technologies that are coming out, Unity 6 with more support for web and other platforms, and now you're seeing like we've seen VR, and then like other like what was it, AR, XR sort of devices. There's going to be new experiences that people are going to have, and new developers coming in with new ideas, and so things are only going to grow and change and expand and beyond what we can imagine. And I think gaming always pushes a lot of the forefront in technology, and so I mean I think it's a great place to get in, and you learn a lot in this industry.
Yeah, so maybe on that note, right, a lot of people like to talk about, like to ask investors what's going to change in the future. And there was a very good book I read recently by Morgan Housel called Same as Ever. And in that book, he says that Jeff Bezos from Amazon, he said that a lot of these industry analysts always ask me, what's going to change? What do you predict is going to change? And Jeff Bezos said that, hey, actually the better question to ask is what is not going to change, right? And why does that analogy make sense? Because he was talking about when you have e-commerce, people will always want fast shipping, low costs. That will never change. And that is what gave Jeff Bezos all the motivation and the conviction to build out like Amazon Prime, all that fast shipping, even though it was very expensive. And today Amazon's a better product for it, right? In the same way in gaming, I think the humankind has always been playing games. Like that's one thing that has never changed, right? It started with, cavemen drawing paintings, and then we have chess, and then we have PlayStation 1, and then today we have PlayStation 5, and people will always play games. The way we play the games will always change, right? But to Will's point, I think gaming is never going to go away. It's a very fundamental human thing. And if you think about how humans are also very social creatures, you also realize that gaming has started to turn into a social platform. Right, it's no longer just like me hiding in my in my basement playing like Metal Gear Solid 1. It's now like a very social activity where you play with friends, right? So I think gaming is evolving, but it doesn't go away.
That's true. So like right now, like in the game investment area, like the AI development is a kind of like a boom, right? But like still, it won't change the game style. It's just changing the style of like game development. So I guess that's true. Like game will be there forever, and like maybe the development style, business style could change, and that will like the game investment will lead the way. I would say, yeah. So I guess that's like any questions that you guys have? Yes. Any questions?
Thank you very much. This is more of a question for Jonathan. So I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about the market segmentation when you do market analysis. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
In regards to what?
When you're analyzing the potential of a game that you'll be investing in or the game studio, like, are there any like categorizations that you really pay attention to?
It's a very tricky question because the answer is it depends. I think in general, you can think about people producing games for the developed markets versus emerging markets. PUBG was produced for a more developed market audience, and then there was a competitor in Asia called Free Fire that was developed by Garena, and that became one of like the highest grossing titles ever sold, 4 billion in revenues per year, and their only difference was they were going to optimize the game to be super low data package size, right? And that allowed a lot of people with smaller phones, like Android phones, to access the games, right? So there is, I think, a narrow window for people to address the emerging markets because this is all, everybody's getting wealthier, hardware is getting cheaper, so eventually that niche of like emerging markets will go away. But maybe within the next 3, 5, 7 years, there's still a market to play into, and that is a market that cannot be ignored. But so that's one way to think about it. And there's like many other ways to think about it. But we can have separate conversations.
Also for Jonathan, I'm curious, how have you seen the strategies from your CVC LPs shift over the last few years in terms of their priorities for making investments with you?
it also depends because like there's some CVC LPs from like America and then some from Japan, some from Korea, and it's all very different. Maybe with as it relates to Japan, one of our LPs is Bandai Namco, and I was involved with the Bandai Namco team to think about like how should like the strategy change for Bandai Namco, for example. So okay, not just Bandai Namco, but also in China, a lot of the strategics are shying away from investing into content because like gaming is in the doldrums, right? Like no one wants to fund games anymore, blah blah blah. Some of the some of these strategics are now starting to realize that hey, like if this is like the real bear market for gaming, it's actually a pretty good time to go back games because this is when valuations are depressed. This is when like there's a lot of like supply of good quality games that are not getting funded. This is important because like 2 years ago in China, for example, Tencent and NetEase, within 2 years, they backed about 300 to 400 companies. The valuations are all super high. Some of like the seed valuations was 200 million pre-money or 300 million, right? And this is just it's crazy. Today it's like 10. It's like a huge difference, right? So if you had spent the same amount of money like 3 years ago, you can back 10 companies today. So I think some of companies are now realizing that, hey, if gaming is such a hit risk driven business model and I need to make like many shots on goal, now it's not quite a bad time, right? So Bandai is actually doubling down on like doing into content. So I think that's a great move. And I think we're starting to see more and more strategics think that way. And you know, I think this is probably a very good vintage for gaming investments.
So we need to go in real. This is another one for Jonathan. So all these creators, they're coming to you with their life dream and their pitch and their heart in their hands. But when you look at a new idea, when you look at a new place to fund, what are the numbers or metrics that you look at?
If you only have like an idea, there are no numbers. So it's really based on what we see in the founder. Does this guy have the hustle? Like we like people who are intense, like really hardworking. Like we believe that this guy is gonna knock through 10 walls to get to where he needs to get to. If you are operating in, if you are doing a new product but it's in an existing space, then we sort of will do market analysis to understand how big is this market, can it get bigger, what is this founder doing in this product that may potentially expand the market even more, or is that like there's a saying, riches are made in niches. So if you find a specific niche that no one is exploring, it's a blue market, and then you can grow it into like 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion market size, that is something very exciting to us too. We don't necessarily always have to play into like existing big markets. Yeah.
Okay, so I think time is up. Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.